A couple weeks ago, someone in the 7-4 crew left a comment on another Hollywood vs. reality video asking if I could do The Dark Knight. It's the opening scene where some mercenaries take over a plane in flight. So, here we go. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 Gear is all about aviation. So whether you're a pilot or an aviation enthusiast, consider subscribing. I've been doing a Hollywood vs. reality series where I've been breaking down aviation scenes in different movies. And when I looked at this scene at first glance, it seemed pretty short and I thought it was going to be pretty easy, but it's actually really complex. There's a lot that's happening in here. The scene was actually filmed in Scotland, and the director Christopher Nolan is actually really proud of it. When I was looking up some stuff on the video, he's actually really proud of this, so I'm going to try not to hurt his feelings. Let's get into it.
The flight plan I just filed with the agency lists me, my man, Dr. Pavel here, but only one of you! First one to talk gets to stay on my aircraft! Who paid you to grab Dr. Pavel? He didn't fly so good! Who wants to try next? Tell me about Bane! Why does he wear the mask? A lot of loyalty for a hired gun!
Or perhaps he's wondering why someone would shoot a man before throwing him out of a plane.
At least you can talk! Who are you?
It doesn't matter who we are.
So first he mentioned that he filed a flight plan, but he only listed one of the three of them.
The flight plan I just filed with the agency lists me, my man, Dr. Pavel here, but only one of you!
And the reason that matters is because every flight, when we go up in the air, we list how many souls or how many people are aboard the aircraft. So essentially what he's saying is that if he threw two of those guys out the plane, it wouldn't really matter because once they land, the people that are on the ground wouldn't even think there was someone missing because they only listed a certain number of people when they boarded the aircraft. Next, let's talk about the aircraft they're in. They're in an Embraer 110. It's a much older turboprop aircraft, and if you aren't familiar with what a turboprop is, I did a video about it a few weeks ago, and it's very exciting.
He said, sarcastically.
Now, I personally haven't been on an Embraer 110, but I have been on a lot of aircraft of similar size. And there's a few things that are very Hollywood about this scene so far. First, the guys that are standing up don't look like they're very small men, yet they're standing up vertically like there's a lot of space. In most of these smaller turboprop aircrafts, there's not a lot of space to stand up. Now, I'm only 6 foot tall, but I've been in aircraft about this size, and you can't usually stand up vertically. I would guess it's somewhere maybe about 5'8", 5'9", something like that. Someone about that height would be able to stand up. But these guys look like they are 6 foot or bigger, and they're standing up like there's no problem, like they're in an Airbus or a Boeing. Next is the doors on this aircraft. It's showing here that they're opening them inward. In most aircraft, the doors are opening outward. For a few reasons, but one in particular is the limited amount of space inside the aircraft. So the fact that they're opening this door inward, that's not very realistic. Next, you'll notice how flush the aircraft door is. Most aircraft have places for pins or different things to help secure the door in place because it's going to get pressurized. So it's not something you'll often see where it's smooth and flush like it is in this scene here, especially on a smaller, older turboprop aircraft. Finally, and this is just something of note, the tail number of this aircraft starts with a ZS. That indicates that this plane is actually registered in South Africa. Every country has a different letter or letters that go on the front of each of their tails, and that shows where they're registered at. For example, if you see a US aircraft, it's going to start with an N. This movie is being filmed in Scotland, so they start theirs with a G. So different countries have different numbers or letters that go on the front there, which indicate where that plane is actually registered. So that was just something that I noticed that caught my eye and something I wanted to share with you. Okay, let's get back to The Dark Knight.
Dr. Pavel refused our offer in favor of yours. We had to find out what he told you.
Nothing. I said nothing. Well, congratulations. You got yourself caught. Sir, now what's the next step of your master plan?
Crashing this plane.
There are a few things that are kind of strange in this scene. First, you see that the aircraft that's coming in above them is actually a C-130. That's typically a military-used aircraft. What's interesting to note, though, is that the flaps are actually out on this aircraft. Usually we only put our flaps out if we're trying to go slow. Those are helped to create lift on the aircraft when the aircraft is going slower. So if you're trying to catch up to a plane or get ahead of it, you wouldn't be flying with your flaps out because it limits the amount of speed you're able to carry. Now the C-130 goes about 100 knots faster than an Embraer 110, but either way you still wouldn't be flying with your flaps out and going slow, especially when another aircraft is cruising. They're not trying to go slow, so why would you be going very slow? That doesn't make any sense. Now you see the plane is actually over them and then the plane starts rocking and creating some turbulence. I think what they're trying to simulate is wake turbulence, which is when you fly behind and below another aircraft's path, the air from the wings actually gets turbulent. So if you fly through that, you can hit a what's called wake turbulence. However, wake turbulence is usually descending from the wings. When it comes off of the wings, it usually descends about 300 to 500 feet per minute. So for the distance that they are and for the height that they are, there's really no way that these guys are experiencing any type of wake turbulence, because they're too high and really almost right on top of the other aircraft. The fact that they're showing wake turbulence, I think, is what they're trying to simulate. That's not very realistic. And I'm not sure what the CIA's protocol is for something like this because I've never flown for them.
Neither confirm nor deny that. See how good I am?
But if you're flying high-risk passengers and then a C-130 pulls out above you and then the door opens up, I would think you'd be making some type of a maneuver. You wouldn't just be looking at them going, I wonder what they're doing. All right, let's get back to the movie.
With no survivors.
Well, in a hypothetical scenario where the C-130 starts climbing, all that the pilots would have to do is either speed up or climb a little bit, and that maneuver would be irrelevant. Now, once the Embraer is actually pulled off of its axis and it has it like that, it's actually going to be probably operating more as like a kite than it is showing there where the wings are ripping off. Now, I have no idea what the structural load is for an Embraer, but I would imagine the wings would maybe bend, but I obviously can't imagine them ever snapping off. But if they did snap off, fuel and other things would be coming out of the wings, and there's a bunch of cables that are connected to the outside of the wings there. So those would all be attached. So you're not just going to snap it off like a piece of wood and then they would just fly off. That's never going to happen. And the other thing to remember is that the flaps are out on the C-130. So they're not even going that fast, and yet they're ripping the wings off of this Embraer. So that doesn't really make sense. I don't know if that was done for filming purposes, but in real life, in that hypothetical scenario, if you're going slow and dragging a plane behind you like that, it would be more acting like a kite than snapping the wings off like that. Let's get back to the movie. Now, we talked about earlier, the door on this aircraft, they have it opening inward. So there's no reason to blow the tail off of the aircraft. The plane is obviously already depressurized, so you would just be able to open the door and push it in and go inside the plane. So to blow it off, that doesn't make any sense. And just like when I talked about the wings, that there are cables and things attached to it, the same for the tail. You know, to control the rudder and the different things, the elevator, there are different cables that are running back there. So if you were to blow it off, you would be having cables and stuff that would be flying around everywhere. Doesn't make any sense. And another thing, which doesn't really have anything to do with aviation, but just, I was wondering, this guy has now been hijacked and he's laying on his back there and he hasn't even pulled out his gun until the guys come into the plane. I don't know why you wouldn't just have your gun out if you're getting hijacked. That doesn't make any sense to me. Alright, let's get to the last scene.
Calm down, Doctor. Now's not the time for fear. That comes later.
I'm guessing at that point they just reel him back into the plane, and that is actually a thing that the military is trained to do, is to reel people into an aircraft from externally. That is actually a real thing that happens. Alright 7-4 crew, that's a quick review of The Dark Knight that you requested. Now I have an entire series that I'm doing where I'm breaking down these Hollywood vs. reality videos. If you're enjoying these, make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell notification so you know the next one when it comes out. In the comment section below, I want you to let me know. Do you enjoy the genre of Superman and Batman, the superhero genre? I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up. Next, usually aircraft doors open outward, not inward, because they get limited amount of airspace. So, for example, ZS is South America.